Hi, Mick McQuaid here. I'd like to welcome you to HCIN700, and because we're not having any in-person meetings in the class, this is the best I can do to introduce myself to you by video. It's worthwhile watching this video. I'm going to go over some things that aren't available anywhere else. I'm mainly going over the My Courses site and the syllabus, but I'm going to throw in a few extras to reward those of you who pay attention. Which isn't always easy. Okay, so this is the My Courses site, and this is the Content tab. So I've clicked on the Content tab here, and I have the table of contents, and the first thing you see in the table of contents is the course syllabus. I have all these other tabs here, a class list, assignments, discussions, grades, and accessibility, which I'll go over as we come to them. You might notice that there's a little, you might not actually have the accessibility tab on your menu. I'm not sure. And if you do have the accessibility tab, I'm not sure what it does for you. What it does for me is gives me a message about each document and tells me if that document is accessible. And you may notice that for the syllabus, the indicator, the accessibility indicator is green, saying that the accessibility score is high. It's only missing one thing. I can click to improve it, and it will tell me that I don't have a title on the syllabus. Well, eventually it will tell me I don't have a title on the syllabus, and it offers to help me add a title. I have struggled with this. I can't figure out how to make it think I have a title on this syllabus. But other than that, it's pretty accessible to blind users. And by the way, you should definitely let me know if you're blind, because there's a lot of stuff in here that's not that accessible to the blind, and we want to remedy that if we can. And we can work together on that. There's also some stuff that's not accessible to deaf and hard of hearing, but I've figured out a workaround for most of that. So if anything is inaccessible to you, you should definitely tell me right away, and I may be able to fix it. Okay, and you see that this syllabus is a draft from last week, and if you download the syllabus, you'll want to check with the version on My Courses, because I am likely to update it. So I am likely to have a different version on here later, and I'll explain why that is in a minute. And you see that they've actually updated the PDF viewer here so that you can see the sections of this PDF, which is nice. And the main thing on the first page here is my office hours, and I just noticed that this isn't really perfectly accurate. So I do office hours by Zoom, and I didn't put my Zoom address on here, so I'll probably update this to include that. And then I also do office hours by appointment. So I have to add that verbiage here. Now, I have to warn you, I don't hang out on Zoom. So in past semesters, sometimes students just go to my Zoom address during those hours and think that I'll be there. But Zoom takes a terrible toll on my laptop's CPU. So I don't turn it on unless I know somebody's there. So you have to email me and say, I'm going to Zoom now. Please join me. Like, I'll be in my office during those hours, and you just have to email me and let me know that you want to have a Zoom session now. And sometimes it takes me a long time to get email at this address. If you email me at mickmcquaid@gmail.com, it gets to me a lot faster. That email is almost instantaneous. This email goes through some sort of a filter, and it sometimes takes hours to get to me. Okay, so there's a lot of incredibly interesting stuff here, learning outcomes and so on. But what's really important is when we get to the schedule. So the schedule starts this first week with a paper on what constitutes accessibility research. So this is a scoping paper, and it's very important. And it may change your view about what accessibility research is. So consequently, you may want to explore different topics after you've read this paper. And you may may change your view of what this course should actually be after you've read this paper. So I actually have, later we'll visit the discussion section, and you'll see there's a discussion question on student suggestions for topics and papers. So there are a bunch of topics here: activism, children, education, accessible designs, accessibility evaluation, accessibility and design thinking, metadata, search, digital affinity, human-centered AI, health, novel interactions, communication, and wearables. So I've made these topics up based on what the recent work is, and they may not be the best topics. So you may want to change or add to these topics after we have been through week 1. So keep that in mind. And you may want to add papers. So for some of these weeks, I only have 1 paper listed, and I certainly think that you can manage, with the course load of a 3-credit course, you should be able to manage reading and writing about more than 1 paper per week. So you may want to, not for this last week even 1 paper is a stretch, but for some of these other weeks, you may want to add papers. Okay, and then we have grading. So I do simple grading. I don't do pluses and minuses, and everybody accepts that until they, get a high B, and then all of a sudden they want me to do pluses and minuses. And then there's a lot of stuff here about the discussion questions. There are 15. You're going to be graded on 15 discussion questions in 3 papers. That's the entire course evaluation content, whatever you want to call it. And this scoring is detailed here. And the first discussion question is due like the second day of, I think it's the second day of class. So you really have to, it's because they're due on Tuesday every week. So the first one will be due on the 11th. So you really have to read these scoring details very early on. Usually a lot of people don't get it for the first week. And there are a lot of things about points. So then you do a post about the article or articles by Tuesday, and then you comment on other people's posts by Thursday. And you get graded both on your contribution plus the contribution that you make in response to others' contributions. So all these points are detailed in here. And then the rest of the syllabus is boilerplate. These are policies that should be in every syllabus. So you may struggle to read them because you're reading them again and again and again. But at some point you need to know these things. Some of them are useful. For example, the resilience policy is useful to read repeatedly, whereas some of these phone numbers are useful to have, or email addresses are useful to have. Yeah, this resilience thing is important and worth reading again, particularly in our very stressful pandemic-induced era. And then at the end are the references. So all these papers that were listed back here are listed at the end in the references section. Here, let me go there. So Mack et al. 2021, the references section is alphabetic. So you can find that paper in there alphabetically under Mack. And you can find the actual paper itself in a separate tab under content called papers, originally enough. And that paper those papers are arranged alphabetically in the repository, and they're all named with the last name of the first author followed by the 4-digit year. So there's a file called mac2021.pdf that's about halfway down that list of files, and that's the very first thing you should check out. You should probably try to read it even before the course starts if you can. It's going to set the tone for the whole course, and it's very valuable. So that's all I want to say about the syllabus. Let's go back to the table of contents and see what else is here eventually. OBS is slowing my computer down. Okay, so I have a thing on grading policies. So work has to be submitted through my courses, not by email. So if you want me to look at a paper before it's due, submit it to the My Courses site and send me a message saying that it's there. Don't email it to me. That really is a drag. You can always resubmit up until the deadline, especially if you resubmit with the same name. So I suggest you call your papers paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3.pdf. And anything that you submit comes in with one of those 3 names. And that way my courses can manage the submissions and tell me which one was the last submission, the one that I should grade. If you change the names like paper 1 draft 1 or paper 1 final version or all these other dumb ways that people try to distinguish between their papers, my courses will lose track of which version is which and will just present me with all the versions, and I have to go through them and try to figure it out on my own. That's totally a drag. It says that the Dropbox and discussion areas will close. I think that's true for the discussion areas, but not true for the Dropbox. I think the Dropbox actually stays open, but I may not see it after the due date. But the Dropbox for the papers, I think is perpetually open. There's no extra credit. You can't resubmit a paper to improve a grade. Now, if you put in a paper before it's due and ask me a specific question about it, that's fair game. If you put in a paper though and just say, "How am I doing?" That's kind of not going to work. If you write a paper as a group, you have to submit a peer evaluation, and here's a peer eval form that you can fill out for each paper. Then let's see, we have searching scientific literature. So this is a PowerPoint from a librarian who is assigned to us, and he has some interesting things to say. It's kind of an old PowerPoint. I should ask him to do a new one. And I don't actually agree with a lot of the things that he says in it, so I'm not really emphasizing it. When you are searching, what I suggest you search for are things in CHI or things in assets. So those are the places where I've gotten 98% of the papers that are on this website. The only other sources I've gone to are Interactions, which is a magazine that published a manifesto, and DIS, which is another conference similar to CHI in a way. And then there's this RIT info guide on HCI. I personally don't find this that helpful. I find the ACM digital library to be more helpful. And the bibliographies of papers are the most helpful. Most of my searching these days, at least, is done through bibliographies of other papers. So I find an author that I respect or that I'm interested in, and I see what they're reading from their bibliography, and then I go search for that. That's really the main way that I search. Okay, then we have the papers themselves, and as I said, it's an alphabetical list by the last name of the first author. And you can see that some of them are completely inaccessible. Interestingly enough, this one is by a blind author, and it's not accessible. And I have a lot of sympathy for her in that regard, because I've submitted stuff to the same conference, and I submit an accessible paper, and then they process it and make it inaccessible. Which is an incredible drag, and we'll potentially talk about that at some point during the course. Oh yeah, there are also some videos. So this video is inaccessible, so consequently I put this text file, which is a link to a YouTube copy of this video, which has great captions. I'm really impressed. Some of the captions are wrong, but most of the captions, they've even gotten some of the discipline-specific keywords correct. So I'm very impressed with the YouTube video that's referenced here, and that goes to a copy of this same video. And then this is the paper. And Cynthia Bennett is a very prolific author, so I've included 2 papers by her. And I could very well have, I think she's actually a co-author on another paper on here where she's just not the first author. And then the Frid video has no speaking in it. So it's accessible to deaf and hard of hearing because there's no There's no speech in it at all. And it accompanies this paper here. I think it's very necessary for this paper. Okay, and then we have, also I have a couple of things. I have a text file that is about Morphic. So Morphic is a project that I'm interested in, I think, an important accessibility project. So I'm very interested in a concept called digital affinity, which has been promulgated by a person named Greg Vanderheiden, who is one of the most, if not the most prominent person in the accessibility research world. And this is a project of his. And I have a photo of it running on a laptop and a photo that I took of his poster at Assets 2019. These are not accessible. I don't even know what I should do. I guess I should click to improve, but I'll do that later. Oh yeah, Cynthia Bennett's a co-author on this paper. So this paper was written by a large number of people, co-authored by a large number of people. So anyway, these are all the papers that I thought were worth looking at that are published in the last 2 or 3 years. And you may have a different idea. So let me know what those ideas are. And that brings us, let me look at some of these other tabs here. Well, first let me look at the class list. So if you want to work in a group, you're going to want to reach out to your classmates. So you're going to want to look at the class list and find out who is actually in the class that you might be able to work with. And you can always email these people. You can just bulk email everybody. You can just click here and then send an email to everybody. I'm not going to do that right now. And say, hey, I want to work in a group on such and such a paper. That's not the discussion questions. That's just the assignments, the papers. Oh, I didn't finish content, did I? I'm such a doofus here. Sorry about that. Let me go back to content, because after papers, there are 4 other tabs on here that you should look at. So there's one on the paper assignments. So this one is not that great because it's actually left over from the previous person who taught this course, and I haven't taken it out, but I'm not that crazy about it because it repeats the information that's in these 3 individual paper assignment tabs. So all this stuff here is more or less repeated. I mean, it's important stuff, but it's more or less repeated 4 times here with a little bit of additional specific text stuff specific to the topics for each paper, the topics that you can use for each paper on these. So probably I should get rid of this and just leave these 3 in place. And this one has a sample paper, and that sample paper is just to show you the format. That paper is like 11 years old, and it's not on accessibility. It's just a CHI paper from back when this course was first originated that the previous instructor put in here, just to give you a sample of what a CHI paper looks like. It's in a 2-column format. You have to format it in 2 columns. And the names of your group members will go across the top. So here's the title, and then the names of the group members, and then RIT, and then your paper in this 2-column format. And you're required to use that format. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can use that format that are detailed in here. One is the CHI website has a template for Microsoft Word that you can use. So you can fill it in that template. You just download that template and then fill your document in there. And then it also accepts LaTeX. And there's a template there, but there's actually a better way to do LaTeX than that. So if you want to do LaTeX, you should, which I encourage, it's my preferred format, you should talk to me because I have a paid account at Overleaf, and you can use that. You can piggyback on my paid account, and so you can do collaborative editing. So this is particularly useful if you're working in a group. You can all be working on the same, it's like Google Docs. You can all be working on the same document at the same time. And when I provide you with the Overleaf project, it'll already have the CHI format loaded in it. So you'll just enter your document into a file called main.tex, and Overleaf will format it for you, and then you just download the PDF that you get and submit that for the paper. So that's actually a preferable way to do this, as in my view. You know, my personal feeling is that's the way to go. Some people are married to Word, so that of course is also acceptable. Okay, so I think that's all the tabs under content. Let me just make sure eventually. Yeah, that's it for content. So I mentioned the class list, so you can use that to find people to work with. And then the assignments has two kinds of assignments. So the peer evaluation, which are not graded, but which you have to do to get a grade in this course. I won't give you a grade in the course if you are in a group and you don't do a peer evaluation. And that's a real drag for you, because eventually incompletes turn into Fs if nothing is done about them. So you want to do, if you do a group paper for paper 1 or paper 2 or both, put your evals here. And then there are the three paper assignments, and they're due February 18th, March 25th, and April 29th. And there's a little thing in here, well, maybe it's in here, notifications. So you can actually have emails sent to you when things are due, when things are listed as being due in this course. So a lot of people don't know about that. And oh, and there's also an app for that, of course. And you can choose which things you want to get notified about. So what you really want to get notified about is assignment due date or end date is 2 days away. I would check that, you know, no matter what else I do. Oh, it looks like I can only do one or the other. Oh, have I not? Well, I have to confirm my mobile number in order to get the SMS. Okay, well, anyway, you should really use that and make sure you stay on top of those due dates. Then we have the discussions. And you can see I've only put a couple of discussions in so far. So there's one that I want you to, that's, oh yeah, there is a point for this one. This one is graded. So see how it says includes assessment. So you get 1 point for introducing yourself. Big deal, but it could be a point, you know, it could be the difference between an 89 and a 90. And I don't round grades up, so you want to be in the 90 if you can. And then this one is ungraded, which is your suggested topics and papers for the class. And you'll notice that all three of these here are due by January 21st. So all three of these are available. All three of these discussions are available till January 21st. So you want to stay on top of these. The third one is if you want to be in a group or you already have a group, you should announce that in this discussion. Then we have the discussion questions. So there's one of these each week, and you have to answer the question, you know, or choose some of the above questions to answer and to form a coherent account of what accessibility research is. So that's your assignment. You have to do that by Tuesday, and then you have to look at what other people have submitted and respond to. I think I asked you to respond to 3 of those things. I mean, it's always worthwhile to look at more, but I'm sure all have busy schedules, and some of you will do just what you're going to be graded on. And then I have the one for the second week set up, but I don't have any of the further ones set up. I'll have those set up as we go along, and they'll be available at the beginning of only at the beginning of the week when they're due. Okay, and then that's about it. Let's see, grades, you don't have any grades yet. Course admin is just for me. Accessibility, this just opens in another tab and shows me what I've got in terms of content. Images without a description, document has contrast issues, tables without headers, HTML content without headings. That's pretty weird. Where do I have that? I don't think I have. Huh. So there's HTML content there. I didn't even know that. So this is quite valuable. This is a new thing they're just trying out. They just tried out experimentally last semester. I participated in the experiment last semester, and I didn't find it too useful. I found you could trick it in some ways into thinking you're more accessible than you are. And then there were other things where I couldn't figure out how to make the accessibility warning go away. And that's true of a lot of accessibility stuff. A lot of people who are well-meaning don't have the technical skill to actually implement the accessibility fixes that they would like to. So, and we'll talk about that. That's actually the topic of some of the papers that you'll see. So that's interesting to know about. But that's pretty much all that I've wanted to talk about, I think. Let me just welcome you to the course. I hope that some of you will take the opportunity to do group work, because I think that you can really benefit from each other's knowledge. None of us know as much as all of us know. So the fact that this is an online course makes it harder for you to access each other's knowledge. And I think the group papers may make that a little bit easier. The third paper will be on your own, though. The only papers 1 and 2 are allowed to be group papers. So let me know if you have any questions or you need some additional clarifications and stuff. And feel free to email your classmates if you want to form groups. And I look forward to seeing your contributions in the first discussion question. Thank you.